everyone. Welcome to The Zest, the official podcast of Orange Coast Magazine. I'm Chelsea Ranieri, and you may recognize today's guest from shows like Laguna Beach and The Hills. He is also an entrepreneur, philanthropist, and an addiction and mental health advocate who works to raise awareness and provide education around substance abuse. Thank you so much for being here today, Jason Wahler.
Thank you so much for having me. Grateful to be here. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. I actually grew up watching you on the shows that I mentioned, so this is very exciting for me.
Oh, man.
But also, as I was researching you, you have such an inspiring and incredible story. So I am very honored to have you on to get to talk about that and share that with our listeners.
Thank you very much. No, it's definitely been a journey, but I'm grateful that I'm here to be able to talk about it. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, as I was reading about your life, I read that obviously you grew up in Laguna Beach, but you loved baseball as a kid. So what first got you into the sport?
I don't know. Obviously I was the youngest of three kids. I had two older brothers. Our family was very active, loved sports. But it was something that I just grew to. There was nothing that I remember being young and being like, oh my God, this is the thing I want to play. I just really enjoyed it. And just it came naturally. And it's something that I obviously enjoyed and pursued for a good portion of my life. And that's one thing I miss. I miss baseball. It was one of my favorite sports. And as we get older, the body just doesn't work the same. I've definitely gone out and played some men's softball games and things like that. But reflecting back, some of my best moments in my life was in Little League. I'll never forget, at 10, 11, 12 years old. And it was a really fun time playing at Riddle Field in Laguna Beach. And times I'll never forget for sure. But it was a sport that I did and still do to this day love very much.
Oh God, I can't even imagine growing up in Laguna Beach. It seems like such a dream. I grew up in Huntington, which is still really great, but Laguna is gorgeous.
You're right down the street. Laguna is very special. And growing up there was incredible. It was an amazing childhood, and just growing up, the water there, and just the beaches and stuff. There's nothing else like that in Southern California, just with all the coves, and it's like a little Hawaii. I love
literally, yeah. Well, I also read that you struggled with OCD growing up, and I actually was diagnosed with OCD in my early 20s, and it was finally, it was nice to finally understand how my brain works and why I was ruminating on things and stuff like that. But can you share a bit about your journey?
What was your habit?
Oh my God. Okay. Honestly, it's reorganizing things, which thankfully it's not, I kind of still do it. But if I'll look at the room and if I'm thinking about something else that's bothering me and I can't solve that immediately, I'm like, this entire room is going to get reorganized right now.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Or I'll be like, that chair is really bothering me. I need to get a different one. And I'll just hyper focus on trying to find another one. And my husband's really good about being kind and gentle and being like, I think this might be a rumination or hyperfixation. But how about you? What was
can I ask you, was it debilitating?
It honestly, I thought that growing up, my mom would be like, you're so obsessive. And I just thought that I would just obsess over certain things. So it would it was debilitating in the sense of mentally it would bother me and it would stop me from progressing throughout my day because I would be so dead set on figuring something out. And I still fall into that routine a lot. But not completely debilitating, very inconveniencing, I would say.
Yeah. No, my OCD, it happened when I was 12 or 13 years old. Mine was actually hand washing. I'd actually wash my hands until they'd bleed, and I'd actually have to wear neoprene gloves and put Neosporin on my hand. I'd wash them 25 or 30 times a day, and just I literally wash my hands, and then I literally see bubbles and stuff in the sink, and I'm like, I didn't. It was mine was very debilitating. It took me this life in general. And as a young kid, I had parents that were very supportive, and that were obviously they could see something that was wrong. You know what I mean? But they were where did this come from? How did this come about? And, saw a psychiatrist, saw therapists, they put me on medication to help mitigate the symptoms and went on my way. And fortunately, never really dealt with the underlying issues, and then come around 15, 16 years old, I come into contact with alcohol, and obviously from there, I'm like, who needs medication? Alcohol takes all this away, and it progressively, it was still there. The medication really did help with the mitigation of the symptoms and stuff like that. But it's fascinating because I've been in therapy, for the last 20 years of my life, a psychiatrist, therapist, I've been to a lot of different treatment centers. And so I've done a lot of work on myself. And so there's a lot of different things that I've done to help with the OCD and to help manage it and get it to a place where it's productive. I still have it in my life today. I mean, if you come to my house, my clothes are color coordinated and my socks are organized. It's weird. It's resurfaced a little bit in my reading. Now when I'm reading, I'm like have to constantly reread. I don't know if that's something else. I'm obtaining it to OCD because I've like hyper focus on making sure that I fully understand. So I actually went up a little bit on a medication, but come to find out, all these years later, I ended up doing a scan with Dr. Amen. He does a show called Scan My Brain, and they do a full evaluation and they do a spec scan on your brain just to kind of see where it's active and inactive, and it can give you a whole history and stuff. And he was able to identify that I had PANDAS, which is where strep throat attacks a part of your brain that creates OCD when you're younger. And so again, with that information and that knowledge, it would have been amazing to know that, to not think that I was, some type of freak or something when I was younger, because I never really understood where it came from and how, because it was so controlling of my life.
Yeah.
But to have that information, it would have been imperative, at 12 or 13 years old, because there's not like a cure for it, but it would have been like, what's the best approach on how to treat this and how to deal with it. And so, again, an SSRI was something that I needed to help kind of quiet the mind. And then there's obviously tools and mechanics and things that you can incorporate, and therapy, still do therapy once a week. And it's super beneficial for me. But yeah, OCD is no joke. I mean, that's where after I got sober and I really was looking at like the addiction component of things. Like I was always so hyper focused on the drugs, the alcohol, the insecurities, those underlying issues that were causing me to drink and stuff. But I never really looked at it from as early as the OCD perspective. And after doing a deep dive, that's where things really started, because at a very young age, I started living a double life. At 12 or 13 on the outside, I was perceived as popular. I was athletic, or, I was with, always dating, always had a girlfriend or things like that. And so I was able to deviate and kind of like project that's the life I was really living. But internally, you come behind closed doors, it's like at 12, 13 years old, I'm like, Mom, my hands are bleeding again. I need neoprene gloves. Like, so I was living this double life, which was the start of losing sight of who I was, because I didn't know how to effectively communicate that. And my parents didn't know how to, like, they did everything they possibly could. There's nothing that they could have necessarily done differently. But I didn't even know how to explain or express what was going on. I remember going to therapist office and different, they could tell something was wrong, but it was this very surface level, like just to get through the meeting, because I didn't know how to express really what was transpiring at 12 or 13 years old. And I don't think most kids do. So it's like, I think learning how to, people have asked, like, what would you have done differently? It's like, learn how to be able to have that type of communication to address really what was going on. Because it took me years of struggling to get to a place that I was able to share what was going on. I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it totally does. It's interesting. Like, it doesn't seem like OCD is something that's really, I don't really know, but studied that much, because people are always just like, oh, I'm so OCD. And I'm like, no, it's not about just being neat. It's so much more than that.
I think there's a lot more research and a lot more people that struggle with it now. Again, not a psychiatrist or a doctor or a researcher, but I feel like there's a lot more information. And there's, if you look up, there's a lot of people that dedicate their services specifically to OCD practices and treatment now. And so they're definitely much more versed in it now than they were in the late 1990s.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, do you have any specific tools that you've learned that have helped you with them?
For me, like I said, it's really just the therapy was and just being able to walk through and talk through those types of things. The medication was very helpful, but I think a lot of from addiction, from OCD, my mental health, I think like my program as a whole plays an instrumental role in that. And I have a lot of, consistency and structure creates safety. So I have a pretty regimented program that I try to abide to on a daily basis. And I think that kind of keeps everything intact personally. There's not something that I do specifically for OCD, if you will. It's more of like what I do as a whole holistic approach for myself. And so, I can answer that now, or we can get into that later, kind of what that what that looks
Yeah,
like.
later. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, you were attending a boarding school in Utah when you got the call about a TV show in your hometown. So can you take me back to this moment? That must have been such a trip.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I'll never forget being at, what was it? I went to wilderness program first, which was Walkabout. And then I went to this program called Discovery Academy. I don't know if either of those are still around. And I was already starting to go through the thick of everything. And I remember when I was out at boarding school, I don't know if it was a friend that told me or my parents, like I forget exactly who told me that the show was happening. But basically, I remember when I was at the boarding school, they were basically like, "Hey, there's a show that has started in Laguna, and basically MTV's coming around, and they're basically filming our hometown off this. It's a spinoff of the OC." And I was just like, "What?" Couldn't believe it. Then when I got back from boarding school, the show had obviously done well, and they were looking for new candidates, and my name got brought up a few different times, and it was crazy because I actually didn't want to be a part of the show originally. We thought we were too cool, and we're like, we don't want to be a part of that. And, the show's lame, but I was later then convinced by friends and family it'd be cool to have your senior year documented. Like, what a unique opportunity. And we thought it was just going to be this one-off, and think that it was going to be over after that. And so obviously I ended up doing the show, and it turned into way more than what we had thought. And I mean, it was just like the show continued to have its success, and it just became more and more popular, it was crazy. It was a crazy ride. And I mean, it was one of those things, like, I'm grateful that I did it. I mean, there's obviously a lot of things that happened that I'm at a place in my life where I'm in a full acceptance. And, before I used to say, like, I wish, I would have done things differently, but I'm really happy with where I'm at and, everything that I've gone through. Obviously, I'm not proud of a lot of the stuff that I went through, but I believe that your greatest deficits become your greatest assets. And so I'm grateful for all the trials and tribulations that I went through. And, I mean, I don't recommend people going through them publicly. It doesn't make it easier, but there was a sense of accountability that was brought into me, being in the public's eye and going through what I went through. And, there's the pros and cons to it. I mean, obviously public humiliation and having everybody know your business is really challenging. And especially when you're really sick, and we didn't have the understanding or the knowledge that we do today around addiction, and or mental health. I mean, there was obviously, we've been treating it for a long time, but I think from a public standpoint, and just the stigma that was always associated with it, people just thought people are, assholes, or they're jerks, or they're just like, they have no willpower. There's so much stigma that's going against it, and not justify and take full ownership and accountability for my actions. But I think that today there's just a lot more understanding around addiction, and it is a disease. It's primary, it's chronic, it's progressive, it's fatal if it's untreated. It is the leading cause of death in America for 50-year-old individuals and younger. I mean, it's a serious thing. So, it's the times have changed, but again, the experiences were crazy. And we're like the last generation that kind of got to experience that. I mean, TV and media is completely different today. Either you watch cable television or you watch DVDs. You know what I mean? That's what it was. It wasn't all these streaming services and the Netflix, the Hulus, the Disney Plus, Paramount Plus, cable. Like there's everything's so saturated now, and so everything was just hyper focused on cable television. And again, it was a trip.
It was a huge show, and so was The Hills. Like, how quickly did you become famous? Like, after it aired?
It was overnight. It was literally overnight when. Even before it aired, there was like episodes and stuff that were like airing in like your local movie theaters, and I remember go to the movies, prior to the previews, there'd like be stuff showing on the screens.
Yeah,
like the trailers would run, and people would call me like, "Dude, wait, you're on like a show?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" Like, they're like, "Yeah, we saw it at the movie theater." And then after it aired, I remember going downtown in Laguna like the first time after it was out, and I went and like filled my car up with gas, and it got bombarded with people, and I was just like, "What the hell?" Like, it was overnight. It was crazy.
Wow.
It changed, and it went from just a very quiet, played baseball, surfed, hung out with my friends, and everybody knowing everything about you, and living a crazy life. I mean, at 18 years old, most people are just, at that time was looking for fake IDs and wanting to go out and stuff, where we were literally being paid to party, travel. And, it was wild for sure.
Yeah. I can't imagine. Well, what was going on behind the scenes in your personal life during the show?
Yeah. I mean, God, dude. Obviously I was struggling, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. I was very uncomfortable in my own skin, just with who I was and, where I was going. I'd totally lost sight of what I'd liked and, the person that I was. I mean, growing up, I was somebody that was very active, very outgoing. Again, loved surfing, skateboarding, snowboarding, playing sports, hanging out with friends. I was that type of person, but addiction slowly drives you to isolation. Right. And I mean, there's just so much depression, anxiety, shame, guilt, lack of purpose, lack of motivation. And so, I was in this real like battle with myself, just trying to identify who I was as crazy or as contradicting as it sounds. I mean, it's the only thing that gave that comfort was alcohol, at that time. And, to at least avoid those emotions as opposed to dealing with things head on. And so, right. I always told people I had an overinflated ego with an underestimated sense of self-worth. And so what I mean by that is I wanted you to, everything that I was projecting, I wanted you to believe, even though that's not what I felt internally. And so I was really sick. I mean, I was, the type of a mental health and addiction stuff that I was dealing with was severe. The amount I was drinking, the amount I was using was of high concern. And again, that's why I ended up going to, 12 or 13 different treatment centers and went through the ringer. Yeah. And I had a lot of underlying issues that I needed to take care of. And, and you're the most impressionable when you're 17, 18, 19 years old, like just in general, when you're just going to college and you're trying to figure out life. I mean, like you're obviously very impressionable then, but then to, be thrown on a successful TV show, it made it that much more challenging, just for your own self-discovery. So it definitely complicated things, but I struggled with addiction way before over the shows. I don't blame the shows. I obviously think it added fuel to the fire and it helped ignite things, just because the accessibility and the notoriety and the ability to deflect and not have to focus on self for the time being was the things that caused. But ultimately, I have pre-genetic disposition. I mean, I'm Cherokee, German, and Irish. I should have had a stamp when I came out of the womb saying like, this kid's not great reviews. So, but yeah, there was a lot of learning. I was just a very immature young person that was, had pre-genetic disposition to addiction, and also had mental health issues, and that was just trying to self-medicate. I mean, it's really in the simplest form.
I did read through kind of the timeline that you have on your website of your experience with addiction. Can you kind of walk me through that and take us to how you got to where you are now?
My timeline from addiction, like just like high level?
Yeah, that works.
I mean, basically, I probably started drinking or using at, I don't know, like 14, 15 years old. It's crazy. I was just doing another podcast with somebody, and I remember the first interaction I had with alcohol, but I don't remember like the first time I got drunk. Mm-hmm. But it progressed from there. I mean, obviously it just started to progress, from 15, 16, 17, started to smoke weed. Then probably like 17, 18 started using like cocaine, and that's where things kind of really started taking off. And I started drinking, it used to be every few days, and then it became to almost like a daily thing. Then it was definitely daily, and then it, would take anything. I liked feeling this different I didn't want to feel sober. I was basically addicted to feeling different, if you will. And it got so deep that addiction took me to not even contemplation, but attempting suicide. And so I was just in this deep, dark place. I ended up getting, arrested multiple times, and, but the moment of clarity, from that. So, it was just a very progressive thing, and it happened over the course of from, 14, 15, 16 to 23 is, basically kind of where it ended. And I remember I was in celebrity rehab and Dr. Drew, and he did my liver test. He basically said I had the alcoholism of a 50-year-old, and I was, I don't know, 23 years old at that time or something like that.
Oh,
and so
wow.
that was pretty alarming. But really what shifted, prior to any of that stuff was I actually ended up having a therapy session with my parents. This wasn't the first time. This was the hundredths of time that we've done this. And I remember sitting in there with my mom and my dad, and basically my mom or my dad looked across, and I saw him. He was shedding a tear, and it was, the only other time I'd seen him break down was when his mom had passed away, and basically, he just looked over and he's like, "Hey, mom and I are struggling. Our family's struggling. Our marriage is suffering. We don't know what to do anymore." He just looked over and he's just like, "Mom and I are like two planks of wood lying in bed waiting for the phone call that you're dead." And for whatever reason, I mean, and I have a very close relationship with my family, and I think it's important even from this, is obviously it's my moment of clarity, but it's important to share with people because I didn't have the motivation to do this for myself anymore. I'd already tried taking my life. I mean, it was just like, I was kind of like at wit's end. I'm like, hey, if this is what society says is amazing, you have money, you have notoriety, you have access, like, then you have it all. Like, that's definitely not the case. And I mean, I was in a place where I didn't care to live anymore. But the close knitness with my family and the dynamic that I had, there was literally like a light bulb went off, and I was like, I don't care enough about myself, but I care enough about you. And they became my motivation for the next, 4 to 6 months until I started to acquire time. And then from there, as my life started to get better, it was something that I could see like, hey, I want to, this is something I want to continue for my life. But at that time, for me, because a lot of people say like people have to be motivated or willing to do it themselves, or they have to hit a bottom. It's like, yeah, for some people that is true, but it's also like, I think for in this day and age, the times are different. And I think it's important for us to help people stop digging. And if there's something that people can latch on to, that can be that motivation for them, at least to just give them the hope that there is, another day, then, that's something that you can do. So that's kind of where my life really started to change. Ended up, acquiring multiple years of sobriety. I had about almost 5 years, and then I ended up relapsing after about 5 years of sobriety. And basically, everything that I had done to get to where I was at, I stopped doing. So I stopped working my program. There's so many different things that come into play with that. And I'm a person that believes addiction or relapse is not a part of addiction. It's actually a lack thereof. So what I mean by that is what's predictable is preventable. So I always say relapse is not a part of recovery. It's actually a lack thereof. I mean, people will disagree with me all over, but that's for me personally, because I could see like what's predictable is preventable. I can look back and see all the areas where I fell off. And if, those things were a part of my program still, it's something that I could have prevented. But ended up relapsing for multiple years. Went through a really bad struggle, got addicted to Adderall, started the drinking again. And ultimately after, 2.5, 3 years on, off, I ended up landing myself at the first floor at Hoag Hospital, while my wife, Ashley, was giving birth to our daughter on the fourth floor. And so, yeah, I mean, addiction is primary, it's chronic, it's progressive, it's cunning, baffling, and powerful. And you'd think that would be enough to get somebody to stop. But I mean, with me being actively in it, I didn't actively arrest the disease. I did not get stabilized. I went up, saw my child be born, and we went home like after I was only 2 days in detox, and we went home, and then I was back at it again. For, I think it was probably like a week later, I was back at it. And then I finally ended up going back to treatment. But that was it. After I ended up doing that. And so basically went back to treatment, was intervened on. And then, from that standpoint, I had about 9 months of sobriety. Ended up taking a pill one day, called Dr. Drew, told him, caught it before it like spun out of control. Had call it a lapse, if you will. Again, not justifying for it, but and so I reset my sobriety date, and I actually just took 5 years on December 17th. So,
oh my God, congratulations!
Yeah, thank you.
So you're still in touch with Dr. Drew?
Yeah, still in touch with Drew.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
How did he help you through that when you called him?
He's always just been somebody that's so supportive and just understanding with this. I mean, I was at a place where I was just like, and this is when we started filming again. There was some other things that started coming up, body imaging, just uncomfortable with the way I was looking. And, again, trying to take the simple way out, right? Oh, hey, I take this, it'll make me feel and look better, right? And he just kind of walked me through, and just was somebody that could listen and provide guidance of like, dude, don't beat yourself up, get back on the horse. you reached out. I mean, that's something that's totally different. I mean, you could have completely isolated and kept this a secret and
Right.
gone down that path again. And so I appreciated just having an ear. Sometimes you don't always need to have, sometimes it's just nice to be able to talk to somebody. You don't always need direction. And it was just, I have quite a few people in my life that I lean on that are mentors and that are able to provide guidance and direction. But, he was somebody that was there to listen and be a motivation for me just to not beat myself up.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, what is the triple A modality?
Awareness, acceptance, and action. That's something that I try to incorporate in my life daily. I think for people that struggle or are going through something, it's important to create awareness around it, because if you don't have awareness, you're not going to be able to accept it. And if you don't accept it, you're not going to be able to take action. And so like anything that I face is like, I bring light to it. First of all, I ask the question, is this true? Or is it something that, is just messing with my head? And if it is, okay, I need to accept, have radical acceptance around what's going on, and be in a place where it's like, okay, this is happening. And okay, now what am I going to do to fix it? What's the action plan? So just a little tool that I've created, awareness, acceptance, and action. And it's been very helpful just in life and in recovery for sure.
That sounds really helpful. Yeah. It sounds kind of like what I've been through in therapy as well. The radical acceptance part. Cause like with OCD, I want to solve every single thing that comes up and I can't. And I like that. Awareness, acceptance, or awareness. What was it again?
Awareness, acceptance, and action.
Action. Yes. Oh, I love that. Okay. So tell me a bit about how you met your wife, Ashley. I have become obsessed with your guys' relationship since researching you.
No, we met through mutual. I mean, we actually met out like before I got sober. It was like with a bunch of people. Basically, I was still partying then. Lost touch. Didn't touch base for probably like 8 or 9 months. Reconnected through mutual friends. And then went on our first date, like probably, I don't know, like a month or two before I got my year of sobriety. And so, the first date when we saw each other, and it was probably not the most memorable. And then, later on when we ended up reconnecting, we just hit it off, and the rest was history, basically. We ended up going out to dinner and hanging. And that was, we've been together, and we got married 10, 12, 13. So we've celebrated 10 years of marriage. We've been together like, 13 years, I think, 12 or 13. We've been together a long time. So it's crazy. But yeah, met out, and then ended up reconnecting through mutual friends.
Oh, well, I love the Jaws Diaries that you guys created. Can you talk a bit about what this is?
Yeah. So Jaws, we originally started, this is back when this round of sobriety, we wanted to walk people through what it was like from the addict's perspective, and what it was like from the codependent's perspective in that first year. So when I ended up getting sober again, we wanted to document that full year and what it was like for my journey and what it was like for her, because again, for, wherever there's an alcoholic or an addict, there's a codependent, and sometimes they're just as sick, if not sicker. And Ashley definitely had her part to play with my addiction. Again, not blaming anything on her, but there's definitely things that she could have done for herself, or, to help her. And look, addiction's a family disease, and she ended up getting caught up into the whole thing. And, that's just what addiction does to somebody. And so somebody that struggles with codependency and or enabling can definitely get sucked up into the disease. And so we walked through that whole first year, what it was like from my side and her side, and going through it. And it was incredible. And so we ended up doing that for the first year, and then we started season 2. And I think, again, so much happened. I think we were, planning to move to Tennessee. And then I think we were filming for The Hills New Beginnings. And so I think shot probably like 5 or 6 episodes of season 2, and then just lost track of being able to do it. And then so now we actually are at a place all these years later. It was crazy going through that first year of sobriety, because now here it is 4 years later, and we've relaunched it. And so not only is it like us going through our addiction, what it's like to go through mental health, but also like, parenting, our newfound, Ashley's newfound relationship with God, my relationship with God, raising kids in this environment, and what it's like raising kids sober, and how we're navigating that road with them, and how we're going to address, addiction with them. And so it's just kind of like a full scope: mental health, addiction, codependency, enabling, everything that we've gone through. We're sharing our experience, strength, and hope, and trying to create a relatable and connective community for those that are in this and wanting to just learn more about what we're going through. Because like I said, we're very open and transparent about our story. And so hopefully that creates some connectivity and some relatability and a sense of safety for people to know that they're not in this alone.
Yeah. And one of the videos that I felt like I really resonated with was the one with Dr. Brooke Bucola. And you're talking about body image. And it was so refreshing to hear someone be like so honest about it. What were some of your main takeaways from that conversation?
Oh my God, I don't even remember that episode. I mean, I remember the episode with Brooke, and Brooke's an amazing person. She's a great therapist, but I think just in general, like when it comes to body imaging and just the struggle with that, I think, the main thing is just being able to be open and vulnerable. Again, it goes back to the AAA.
Yeah.
If you're not aware, you can't accept. If you can't accept, you can't take action. And so for me, it was just being able to bring it to the surface and talk about it, and come up with a game plan of what it is that, you can do. And for me, it's life is always constantly evolving. I always tell people my life is like on a pottery wheel. I'm constantly just, shaping and molding it. There's never going to be perfection, and it's dealing with issues as they come. And, but for me, it's something that I addressed and, was able to, overcome. And I think, again, it started by bringing the awareness to it. But exercise and nutrition has been a very big part of my life. And, it's something that is a part of my routine that I hold, I'm very consistent with. And, there's behaviors and mannerisms and stuff that I can shift and change and, to better my overall health. And so again, it's a journey. It's anything worth having is not easy, and it takes time to combat those things. But, I'm grateful that she was on there and we're able to talk about that, and hopefully it created some, connectivity with people that are going through the same thing.
Definitely. Like so many of my friends that I talk with have body dysmorphia or struggle with it in some way. So it was really an amazing conversation to get to listen to.
No, thank you.
Of course. Well, can you talk a bit about, is it Alyst Health? Alyst?
Yeah, Alyst Health. So I've been working with them for the last 4 years. They're the first ever JCO accredited at-home treatment provider. So they primarily work with like C-level executives, athletes, and entertainers. They bring treatment to the comfort of your own home. So it's for people that are wanting discretionary purposes, or they're not wanting to go into a brick and mortar. They're able to provide full wraparound services from, ASAM certified doctors all the way down to nutritionists. And so it's an incredible service, just another resource and tool for people that struggle, that are wanting a different approach. And it's been incredible working with them for as long as I have. They help a lot of people.
Yeah, it sounds like an incredible company. Well, you did bring up Dr. Amen earlier. I actually interviewed Natalie Bucos on this podcast as well. Yeah, she's great. Well, what work do you do with them now?
So I've been working with Daniel and the team for almost 2 years now. I'm actually the director of the Change Your Brain Foundation. So Dr.
No
Amen.
way.
So I help run and shape that. This whole last year, our primary focus was around events and awareness and creating exposure for the organization, which was incredible. But our primary goal and our mission is to end mental illness by creating a revolution in brain health. And how we're doing that is through our 3 pillars, which is research, education, and scholarships. And so it's been amazing. The work that we've been doing has been incredible. This last year for scholarships, we put over 113 people through the full process, which is the full evaluation, which is comprehensive assessment, brain scans, diagnosis, full treatment plan with follow-ups. We've done over 50 research projects since the foundation has been in inception. This year, we're going to be focusing heavily on depression and concussions, which is going to be incredible. And then educationally, this last year, we've impacted over 15,000 students with some of the curriculum and the courses that we've created. And so we're wanting to continue that. And we're wanting to make brain health, the new term. Mental health has been out there, but what happens if the issues are really brain health, and there's things that you can do to shift and make those changes. And so we're wanting to make brain health accessible to everybody and bring light to that. I mean, if you think about it, mental health is the only medical profession that they don't look at the organ that they treat. And that's how it's been for the last 150 years. I mean, they basically just been clustering symptoms and throwing medications at it. And so Daniel's really pioneered and paved the way for a lot of this. And again, there's a lot more and a long way to go. But again, to actually look at the brain. And I mean, he's got the largest inventory of brain scans. I mean, he's got over 250,000 scans, which is truly incredible, and really making a shift. I mean, it's awesome to be a part of this. And I've learned so much about addiction over my life, and being in it and a part of it for over 20 years. I've wanted to get more and more knowledge around mental health, and it's been awesome to be able to have, Daniel is somebody as a mentor and somebody that can provide more insight, and, selfishly, you get to learn more about yourself. So it's a process.
That's incredible. Well, with the relaunch of The Hill's New Beginnings, you and Ashley created a platform to support people who feel trapped in addiction, codependency, and mental health challenges. Can you talk a bit about this platform?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think by expressing vulnerability, it creates humility, right? And so I think, Ashley and I, again, it's kind of why we started Jaws. It was also going through what we went through. And I mean, even on The Hills, it was just like, hey, look, if, we can be open and vulnerable about this, I think we can be able to maybe help or connect with people. And ultimately we did. Even the story about me being at the first floor at Hoag Hospital and Ashley giving birth, like, I thought I was the only person in the world that would have happened to. And it's like, it wasn't just, there was like hundreds of people that had reached out and like similar experiences, different things that they'd gone through that were very close to that. And some people had the exact same experience. And so it was just creating that connectivity and bringing that awareness to it lets people not feel like they're, makes them feel like they're not alone in the process. So, for us, it's just something that we love. And, we've really dedicated our lives to trying to be a beacon of hope for those that are lost. And, there's a lot of power in sharing that. And so again, is we're open books to that. And we want to continue to help as many people as we can.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Well, you've received so many awards for your incredible work, such as the Voice of Recovery Award, the Hope Award. Is there anything coming up that you want to shout out for listeners to keep an eye out for?
No, I mean, thank you very much for bringing that up. No, I mean, I think when it comes to those types of things, it's crazy to look back and see the trials and tribulations and the depths of struggles that I was in. It's just amazing to see that, my life has been able to make a complete 180 and to be where I'm at. And so I think for those that are out there that are struggling, it's like, look, there's definitely a light at the end of the tunnel, and anything's possible. So it's been incredible. But I think one of the things I want to talk about or shout out is there's a new company that I've been working with. It's called Sober Safe, and Sober Sure. It's the first ever transdermal alcohol monitoring detection company. So it's basically it's a fitness wearable. It looks just like a Fitbit, but it tracks alcohol monitoring for 24/7. It's got band removal notifications. And then it's also got GPS tracking. And so again, it's amazing for people that are newly in recovery, that are just coming out for a level of accountability. And as they're reacclimating, and then also for like teen drivers, it's a great way to keep them accountable.
Yeah.
So that's one of the new things I've been working on, which I'm really excited about. Hopefully to even replace breathalyzers. It's a lot more humane than having to be like, hey, hold on, I gotta go breathalyze. So it's just another tool in the toolkit. But something that I'm really excited about. And then I've been working on a project in Tennessee. It's called YANA, which is You Are Not Alone. It was basically a big PSA that we did for the state of Tennessee around mental health and addiction. We actually shot the first one last year, and the second series is coming out this year. And then all the work that we're doing with Change Your Brain. I'm really excited about that and the research and the scholarships and stuff that we're able to provide to people. So, I mean, it's a lot of the same stuff, but just really motivated and encouraged around the work that we're doing to create a better quality of life for people.
Yeah, and it's such incredible work. Well, we are coming to the end of our time, but before I let you go, I have 3 final questions for you that we call the Thoughtful 3. So what is an inspirational quote that you live by?
I mean, something I try to do every day is do something nice for somebody and don't get caught.
Oh, I love that.
People, instead of looking for accolades or things like that, like whether you just open the door for somebody or you pay for somebody's coffee or like whatever it is, like just try to do something nice for somebody and don't get caught. Don't look for acknowledgement in it, and if you can kind of live that way, it's intentional.
Yeah, definitely. And then can you share a bit about the importance of having a routine and what some of your favorite routines are?
Yeah, I mean, routine is everything for me. Again, structure and safety, structure and consistency create safety. And for me, I have a routine. And in the morning, that's I wake up, and it's not necessarily always in this order, but I wake up, I do a prayer, I do meditation, I do a gratitude list of not only 3 things that I'm grateful for. It's not only what, but why. That's where the meat really resides. I think it's important to understand that. I send that off to about, 10 other people. It's a great way to start connection and communication with people, and just start off on a good foot. And then from there, a gym is a big part of my life. Usually I'll incorporate going to the gym, at some point. Usually it's in the morning, but if it's not, I'll get it in there at least 3 or 4 times a week, which is super important to me. Again, I have a men's Bible study that I attend once a week. I also have a men's accountability group, and then I also have therapy. So it just depends on what day that falls on. And then after that, I also participate in some, whether it's certain program stuff that I'll go to. And then at the end of the night, I do a reflection, which is basically, I do an inventory of the areas that I was wrong, and identify where, if I need to make amends or clean things up. But I also make a list of the things that I did really well. And so it helps me wrap out and round out my day. So when I put my head to my pillow, it allows me to have a fresh start the next day.
Wow. I love the idea of sending 10 people what you're grateful for every single day.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah. And then lastly, what advice do you have for someone who might be listening, who has a loved one that's struggling with addiction and isn't sure what path to take?
I think if you have somebody that's struggling, I mean, it's one is my heart goes out to you. I know it's never easy watching, somebody that's going through it, but understand that, again, as addiction is a disease, I think the best thing that you can do is get educated for yourself and understand what that person is going through. Just remember, there's no such thing as recreational use of heroin. There's no such thing as recreational use of drinking a bottle of vodka a day, or, smoking crack or meth. It's like, again, not justifying for them, but that's a pretty miserable place to be. So just try to have an understanding. And again, it's not to justify for them, but, just be mindful. It's a pretty miserable way to have to live every single day. And just get educated. And then from there, reach out, pick up the phone, talk to somebody, whether it's a friend, a colleague, in this day and age, everybody knows somebody that's gone through it. And so again, creating that connectivity and the sense of relatability when you have that with that shared experience, that really helps you navigate that. And, start talking to somebody, seek guidance and direction, whether it's through a professional, see a therapist, go to an Al-Anon meeting, reach out to your church, your congregation. But you got to communicate, because again, is you're not in this alone. Millions of people are going through this right now as we speak. And there is a way out, and there is a solution. And I think the more you educate yourself, the better off you're going to be to support your loved one.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing that and for sharing your story. I really, really appreciate you coming on. This is so great getting to talk with you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Of course.